Hello there, my name is Anthony Burokas, and today I'm here for Streaming Media Producer to talk to you about doing a live virtual event. I have been talking with Tim Kennedy, who is the executive producer of the North Texas Irish Festival live event online, 6 virtual sound stages for the 2021 North Texas Irish Festival. And I also spoke with Michelle, who, like myself, was one of the producers on this event. And hopefully, with these discussions, we can enlighten you on what things worked for us and what things didn't work for us. So without further ado, let's look at the interviews. I'm here with Tim Kennedy, who is the mastermind behind the North Texas Irish Festival's multi-channel live stream event. And I have to say, Tim, it was an audacious undertaking. How did you, I know the North Texas Irish Festival is an in-person event that hasn't happened because of COVID. What got you to conceptualize this on this virtual event?
Yeah, so this was going to be a major sort of anniversary for them, 40th anniversary, and the intention was to do something pretty bold to celebrate. And then, of course, COVID got in the way of that, and so we really wanted to do something and really kind of make a splash out of it. And they had asked me to come up with some ideas, and I'd been noodling around on the idea of multi-stage, multi-stream events for a bit, and it really seemed well suited to the Irish Festival because they typically have around 10 or 12 stages, and people sort of hop all around to kind of go and see a variety of different shows. So it became clear to me that we could replicate that experience, right, with the right sort of a web front end, having multiple live stream channels going at the same time, and an easy ability to sort of jump around and see the programs on all of the various stages. So I pitched it to them, and they were crazy enough to go for it. So yeah, that was kind of the foundation of it, was really just trying to replicate the event itself and do something special. And so, and I guess third, not a minor point, but I'm a pretty big advocate that streaming can not only be sort of a good substitute, but in many ways can help create events that are superior to the ones in person. And so I really wanted to help kind of show that could really be the case.
I appreciate that you wrote down some of the things that you put together, and just the amount of different services and little pieces that needed to come together seems almost kind of daunting. Just list for us, like, we had capture and mixing and hosting and chat, and just go through some of these services.
So, the whole concept was to create a web front end that hosted 6 streaming platforms in it. We used Boxcast as our CDN. They were the ones willing to provide us 6 at one time for a reasonable price. And we built a mobile friendly front end and a website builder called Bandzoogle, which is probably not well known to your your viewers, but it's very well known in the music community as being really well suited to selling music and supporting music live streams. So that was sort of the foundation of it. We decided we wanted to have chat capabilities on each of the stages, so people could interact with each other. So we ended up bringing in Arena for that, mainly because, again, we could have 6 of them, and we could have chat moderators. They did, an AI-based, profanity filtering, which oddly got kicked in more often than I would have hoped. People like their Irish music and cheering on their bands. So that was sort of the technical side there. The team itself we assembled, we had a team of around, I guess it was 6 people running the streams, and we used Unity for comms to keep everybody sort of connected. We used Discord. as a way of sort of handling chat communications and chat rooms. So yeah, just a lot of lot of different technology, and of course, probably one of the most important decisions was vMix, was the the switching platform that we used, and we had, I think, 5 instances of it loaded and running in AWS. We just decided to put as much of this in the cloud as we could, and so that was sort of a new thing for us too. For those of you who weren't in Texas and experienced the 5-day power outage and ice storm and 0-degree temperatures, we were just a little bit nervous, since that was, I think, 2 weeks after that power came back on, that in fact we would actually even have power for the event. So so we made a fairly late decision to move to AWS to run the various vMix machines as well.
Thank you, Michelle, for
Yes.
also joining us. And you had a very unusual role in this, in that you weren't just a producer, you were also tasked with like diving in headfirst into AWS. How did that work?
Yes. Yes, I was. And I had never seen it or touched it before, other than what I've seen on the forums, right? So
Right.
I really didn't know what I was getting into. But luckily, there are some good videos out there on YouTube that you can follow. And that's what I did. And I just followed along. Managed to set up 4 of them, but I had to do that twice, so 8 of them. So probably more than twice anyway. You know what? It was a great learning experience, and I'm really glad that I did that, but know that it's just going to take, there's a learning curve going into it. And it's definitely very doable, and now that I've done it, I'm going to use it from here on out. But
so what specifically, what learning points did you come? Like, you get in there, and, in case anyone doesn't know, I also only learned by doing this with our show that AWS gives you set up an account and you get a free instance. Now,
right.
It's a very lightweight little thing,
Yes.
but you're able to get in there and play and try, and, and if you're using, like, if you're a producer and you want to use external control surfaces, they don't naturally come with your Amazon wireless connection. You could use Parsec or Microsoft Remote Desktop, or I like AnyDesk, but you can use any control app to get in there and be your remote fingers. But the only thing those apps give you is your keyboard and mouse.
Right.
So if you want something else, you need, what do you need?
Right. I mean, you can use Companion with the emulator that they have in the Companion with like Stream Deck. I never did get my Stream Deck going, but also there was, well, we'll get into it later, but I had to switch back and forth, right, between my home setup or my studio setup and that cloud instance. So there are ways, though. I know you can use your external, Stream Decks or whatever kind of controller you have.
Right. And I was delving into, I think it was like USB Anywhere or something like that. There was a piece of software that basically acts as like a USB tunnel to take everything connected to your USB locally and channel it into the remote instance. So if you have a Stream Deck or if you have a MIDI control surface or something like that, those are supposed to connect and talk to each other. So I was working on that, but I never actually fully got it running before I actually started to really get into the show.
Right.
And, as Tim has spoken, the ice storm sort of threw the whole timeline off. All this extra time we were supposed to have to, hey, let's get in there and do like a trial run of the show and things like that. That really didn't come about because we're all busy worrying about like water pipes and stuff like that.
Yeah, that was I think that was probably the biggest problem, because we didn't have time to test it properly. And we didn't have the content to test it because everything got delayed in, getting it together. So it was a problem, and that was we learned a whole bunch from that. Yeah, my biggest learn or takeaway from that in regards to the instances is go big. Don't start, because I thought I built the one the first one based on my home setup. I figured, well, if I have 16 gigabytes of RAM and I have this and I have that, it should be just fine. The same in the server. Wrong. It didn't work that way. Did not, for whatever reason, it did not work that way. So recommendation is to go with the 4 large.
4 large, yeah.
4 large.
For those who haven't yet delved into it, Amazon has their own nomenclature for what resources they give you, I guess would be the best way to call it.
Yeah.
So what were we using, like, on most instances? Like, I should say mine actually worked as the way Michelle built it. Mine worked.
Yes.
Because I didn't have multiple remote people connecting into me. I was supposed to have Ireland coming to me over SRT, but their SRT send, we could get it, but it would have a glitch every couple seconds or every half second. It would just, and so we tried the vMix call from their computer, and it looked beautiful. And it was like, okay, let's go with this. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, they were using OBS, and we said, send it to YouTube. I gave them a stream link or RTMP codes for YouTube. And at the same time, they were sending vMix call into my AWS. They were also sending to a YouTube account, which I had on my laptop, dialed in, ready to go. So should anything happen, I could just start sending from my laptop. So, we all had backups. So
right.
I think your backup became a primary, right?
My backup became the primary, definitely. So in my for my show, I had let's see, I have to look back and see exactly how many, but for like every hour I had 5 callers call in. So and then that in between those times were pre-recorded media that I would play back. And the instance that I was running, which was the same build as you had, completely it went over, it overloaded, and it just the stream was choppy and it was awful. So I bailed back to my studio, my home studio. So certain things it'll handle, and when I tested it tested fine. So I don't know why on the day of the show it didn't do so well, but
we had some other issues as well with SRT and sort of getting it set up. There's just it's just different, right? I think you had a fun little challenge with every time you sent an SRT signal to a port and stopped it, you could never use that port again on that machine without rebooting it. Like, it's just weird stuff, right?
It was, the whole thing was sort of a learning experience in many different ways. SRT in and of itself is a learning experience because there's the caller and then there's the listener, but then there's a separate set of terms like the caller and the receiver, and all 4 of those terms seem to be completely interchangeable, dependent upon who can actually set their port forwarding. So exactly. Whoever can set their port forwarding, then I can call to that port. Even if I'm the listener, I can call, which makes no sense in terms of just like being logical, but that's the way it works. And also, like you said, as an end user, yes, we all had backups in place because, regardless of AWS, which was going to be, it's like, well, we are going to go, local, but then we don't know about power. So let's go with the backup, which would have been AWS. But then it's like, well, let's just go with that as our primary and use our local as a backup. But having backups in place, regardless of what your plan is always important. Yeah. I had my entire show loaded up on my laptop, and anytime I could, click play on that and push things.
Yeah, definitely don't choose a festival of 30,000 viewers as your first time to run AWS. Is sort of my advice to folks. There's just a lot of funky little things you have to learn and figure out, and a whole suite of things that can go wrong that you would have never thought of on running it on your own desktop, right? So,
right. Well, it also brings up a very key point in terms of AWS, in that making a change takes time.
It does, and it's like at least 24 hours usually. But we were able to do that one like they did it in 2, I think, which is kind of unheard of. But yeah, I think part of it has to do with it depends on where your server is built, what location. Because some of them have them available and some of them don't, so they have to go make sure that that particular location has the servers available to do it. And so it kind of depends on your location also, right?
Right, because technically there's so many millions of people using AWS that
Yeah.
it isn't like you walk into a room and all of the server power is readily available only to
Right.
you.
Right.
And, oh, did you want this? Oh, click, done. No,
Right.
It's like they have to allocate your resources among everybody else's resources. And if you're on server A and you just fit into A, but if you now you went bigger, well, now you don't fit into A anymore, but I have space in C, they have to literally like move your allocation around between machines. And as far as I know, it seems like it's actually a manual process, like somebody has to physically do that on their end.
Yeah, I don't know about that. That's a great question. I don't know, but I do know that the G series, I mean, that stands for graphics, right? So those are the ones that have the GPU, and they're kind of in high demand, and probably because of all of us all of us producers going, wow, this is cool, let's try it. So Yeah.
I know we're talking about the little glitches that occurred, right? But in all, we pulled it off, right? We had this fantastic experience. We had 39 hours streamed in a day across 6 channels. We had a little bit of a hitch with our feed from Ireland, so we haven't really talked about that, right? But one of the unique things I convinced the Irish Festival to do was to actually send a live feed from a stage in Ireland that hosted a whole bunch of local acts. And so, the bands that were there and even the headliners all streamed from that location. And we actually had a Boxcast server purely coincidentally hosted in AWS that crashed and took down just one of our 6 streams, but it also took down 10 or 20 other of their customers. And so they had to scramble, and it was almost an hour before we got service back up again on that 6th instance. And that's a lifetime, right, in a live stream. But the good news is folks had 5 other channels to go watch, and we got the channel back up, and everything was good, right? And Boxcast was in constant communications with us about what was going on, which was fantastic. That's why I selected them as their support is legendary, right? When you have an issue, you can get people instantly. You're not waiting 2 hours, 24 hours to get a response.
Right.
And they even
in a live event, that's critical.
Yeah.
You got to have answers. One of the key things that I really think you did to, as they say, de-risk this event is there was a lot of content that was pre-recorded, or look live, that was included in this. And even my show, the Ireland show, because they were using a live stage and they would have to change the stage between acts, they pre-recorded certain things so that when one act finished, I'd go to a small recording so that they could move stuff around, add a 3rd seat and things like that. And then we go back to the live show. So that pre-recorded content really does help in terms of like, listen, I need to shift something. Let's push a video and we could do something in the background, right?
Right, yeah. We were originally planning on doing it all live, right? Having all these stages and live feeds from every one of them. And I just got cold feet. I just said, there's so much risk, in this, and especially because of the ice storms and everything else, right? And of course, you run these, issues with COVID and making sure you have to, keep things, socially distanced and masked up, and so you just can't have a big presence, in these venues at that time, anyway. We in Texas, pretty much all of the events were pre-recorded in the few weeks prior, so they're all dedicated, recorded for the festival. They weren't sort of reused material. It was all original material, but we recorded it, and I think we ended up having almost 150 different video segments that we were able to use and bring in. And then what we did is, I'm not a fan of live streams of purely pre-recorded material, because I just feel they have they don't have the energy, right? So what we did is for all of those local artists that were recording, we actually brought them in on vMix call for about 5 or 7 minutes to, have a little interview, talk about the music, talk about themselves. And that went really well. We got huge praise for that because a lot of people had never met the bands. People have been going to this festival for 40 years, right? Some of these bands have been playing for 40 years. There's a band who played 40 years ago that is in our group. And but people had never met them or talked to them, right? And so they had a chance to actually, hear a live interview with them,
Right.
introducing the pre-recorded material. So, and that was a really good balance of energy with, a reduced risk that I thought. And we also could make the effort to get the music right. We recorded the music in advance on a stage. What we did with the bands is we recorded 55 minutes of music and we let them pick 45. So if there were 2 that they messed up, they could scratch them, right? And so that gave them a little bit more comfort because none of these bands had played in a year. Like this is the first time they played in a year, right? So they were all really nervous. And they all wanted, let us take 4 or 5 takes. And we're like, no, we're going, right? We're filming. You can scratch a couple of them, so don't screw up too bad. And
Right.
We're going with this, right? We're trying to give this live feel to the event. But yeah, that was huge, I think, in terms of de-risking it and giving us the ability to, juggle when we needed to juggle. So
I would say that making sure you have more time to test and that's really hard in this instance because of the storms and the lack of power and all that went down. That's why we didn't have the time. But I think that we just didn't have enough time to go through the whole show. We should have gone through it a few times, but we didn't have any time. So yeah, that would be my other, I think just test and try to break it and test some more.
Right.
Is the way to go, right?
Yeah. So testing and rehearsals.
Yeah. Right.
Rehearsals. I've done shows and we did a rehearsal and it wasn't until we didn't do a full-on rehearsal. They kind of like smushed the tech check into setup day. And so we did that. And the next day was production. And first half of the day went great. And then the second half where we had 4 callers on one machine, 4 callers on another machine, NDI going back and forth, and NDI going to another machine, doing an out of machine record and all this stuff. And then our internet on that one machine, the NIC just sort of like got overwhelmed and would drop out for a couple of seconds. And it was just like, everybody's like, well, what's going on? It's like, well, we didn't actually like have a moment where we did all of this.
Exactly.
And connected all these people at the same time.
Right.
To uncover that for whatever reason, the NIC in this one machine wasn't going to do a gigabit reliably. So it was like, there's you gotta actually do it to know that it can do it.
You do, and you have to also hit the record button, hit the stream button at the same time if you're using them both off the computer, right? Yeah. So everything, get those 5 callers in at the same time you're gonna roll tape, or roll record. So yeah, it's all you should completely do exactly how the day of show is going to, because you completely rehearse it.
Yeah.
Just do the whole thing, if you can.
And then like we were saying, and if that seems to work, add a 6th caller,
right.
Add a second record,
right.
Add a second stream. Where is the breaking point? Do you actually have overhead? Are you like right at the limit, and then look at the computer, task manager.
Yep.
See where you are and everything. So if you're doing all of this and your CPU and GPU are down at 30%, you're probably good.
Right. Exactly. And it definitely depends. Like you had a SRT and a WebRTC. That's what you had, and your computer instance was fine with that, right?
Yeah. Well, like I said, we didn't even use the SRT. So I just had playbacks, record, and the one call-in that was solid all the way through the day. It was like the most magical thing. It was beautiful. It looked good. It sounded good. You couldn't tell the difference between the vMix call and the recordings they had sent me. You just couldn't tell it.
That's great. That is great. Yeah.
So let's just cover, don't want to keep you too long. I just want to cover the audience, the distribution. How did it come across? How big was the audience? Where did it go?
Yeah, fantastic, right? So a normal Irish festival has about 60,000 people attend over 3 days. And we had 30,000 watch it live from 18 countries, which was really special because, normally it's a very local audience that comes. But what we did is we picked up a whole host of people who had gone to it over the years and moved away and were on the East Coast, or, we had a lot in Europe as well. And they were able to kind of watch it for the first time in many years. We got a whole host of emails in from folks, thanking us, and it was people that had gotten on in years and couldn't move around the festival like they used to, were actually able to enjoy the festival experience for the first time in a decade, right? Things like that. It was really heartwarming to see just the huge response and the positive response that we got. It was funny as well because the Irish Festival, I've worked with them for years. At the end of the festival, there's always a host, 30 or 40 people complaining about, food was too expensive, you didn't have my favorite beer, parking was too far, whatever. You just get a lot of folks that grumble a bit. We didn't get one negative complaint, and that's kind of astonishing. And we used it as a fundraiser as well, and it was it far exceeded our goals to cover the cost of the event. So it was really well received by the public. The board were just ecstatic, right? They kind of put their trust in me, right? They didn't exactly. I don't think they exactly knew what they're getting until the day of, right? But when they saw it and just were able to kind of interact and jump the stages and all of that kind of stuff, they were just I had a really touching note from one of the board members basically saying, it was actually, the video quality actually made it better than the real thing in some respects, he wrote. If I was sitting in a crowd in Dallas, there's no way I could have seen exactly, how this person's fingers move on that accordion or gotten that close. Right. So it was just, to him, it was a superior experience. And that's exactly what I was going for, was somebody to kind of get that, right? That you could actually have a better experience than going there in person. So that was really appreciated.
I think that you gave me a note. It says festival is largest in the state and normally gets around 60,000 plus attendees every year, and that's over several days. Now, right. The festival you created online was an afternoon long. The Ireland part went into the evening, but the festival part was an afternoon long, and we had about 30,000 people in 1/6 the time, and it continues to continues to be viewed as well. So like you said, the reach is much different. And what do you think how do you think the effect of this result will change how the festival is done in the future? Do you think it's going to, when we can, is it going to go, we're completely in person, hybrid, or continue to be online?
They really want to look at hybrid, and and as we're looking at next year, right? They've asked me to come up with some ideas for them. We're making the assumption it's in person, and people will be able to move freely, but the ability to get access to maybe even the performances after. They're talking about having that live feed from Ireland every year going forward, just because it was such a great connection to have. And so we're talking about, well, how do we do that? Do we, we're talking about actually having a stage that has a, broadcast from Ireland and chairs in front of it and a good sound system, right? It's just, those are some of the things that we're trying to look at to kind of help make that connection between Ireland and Dallas, and and also provide some online capabilities for folks to kind of interact and come in. But the risk is just, how do you do it without discouraging in-person attendance, because you're carrying all of the sunk costs. It would be catastrophic if 30,000 people went online and 30,000 people came in person, right? So how can you find a way to encourage the attendance, but not sabotage the financials of it. So that's what we're trying to figure out and do. I suspect, like I say, at least some of it will be streamed on the internet at the time. There'll probably be replays available. There'll probably be an ability to pay for access to all of the concerts after the fact. Things like that, right? get a little bit of time to figure it out this time.
Yes, that's the best thing. But I think the online audience for an event that's only online includes a lot of people who would much rather have been there. And all those people, if given the opportunity to be there, they will still go. Yeah. There will be a certain, a small shift, I think, this is just my opinion, a small shift in a certain percentage where I like going, but the parking, maybe the complainers, I didn't like the beer, I don't like the parking, I'm just going to watch it online and drink my own beer at home.
Yeah. I hate that shade of green of the beer. I'd never use that shade of green.
So whatever. But then you also gain people who would not have ever gone or can't have gone. Like you said, the people that you had spoken to, or people who reached out to you after the fact, that they were able to attend from other states, from other countries. You gain all of that you don't normally have if it's just an in-person event. So I think hybrid probably gives more than it takes away to an in-person event.
Yeah, I'm hoping. And an idea I'm kicking around is, instead of it being a 3-day festival, maybe it's 1 day online and 2 in person. And that would, give something special on one of the days, give everyone a bit of a flavor. But it's also sort of a teaser to get people to come out. So it could actually work, as form of promotion to maybe encourage more attendance. So that's those are all things we're kind of stewing on, and we're just sort of waiting to see how this whole COVID thing sort of ends up as well. I'm sure it may have a thing or two to say about this next year at this time. So,
all right, Michelle, I want to thank you very much for sharing your time, sharing your experiences. I think us going through this and sharing this will benefit a lot of people who are interested into an AWS, who are trying it out. It's like, oh yeah, it's just a virtual computer. It's a bit of a learning curve.
Yep, exactly. No, my pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me. I really appreciate it. It was a great experience, and it was great working with you and Tim and the whole group. I mean, it was just great. Lots learned, and that's what we do in this business.
Yep.
We learn, unfortunately, often the hard way, and that's just the way it is.
Yeah. All right, Tim. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate you letting us and the viewers know some of the details about how you put this, big event together, 6 live streams, international, feeds as well. And I think, you really put together a great show. We had, great producers all around, and we had great capability that, handled all the challenges that came in front of us. And, me personally, I look forward to doing it again next year.
Yeah, I'd love to.
All right. Thank you very much. Right. And thank everyone for watching.